All right, welcome to the Tuesday, August 8th Admin and Public Works Committee meeting. We'll begin with the first item on the agenda, which is the roll call.
Councilmember Garetano,
Here.
Councilmember Clark. Here. Councilmember Edens is absent today. Councilmember McCutcheon. She was just on Zoom. Okay, hopefully she'll pop back in here in a minute. Councilmember Farmer, absent, or is he on Zoom as well? Okay, Councilmember Jaxie,
Here.
and then Councilmember Hopper.
Here.
Okay, and Councilmember Nian. Here.
Did we get Councilmember McCutcheon to acknowledge that she's on? Councilmember McCutcheon, if you can just turn on your video and audio and state you're present.
Well, I'm here.
There you go. Okay, great. So we got everyone that has announced themselves as present here. All right, so we'll move forward with the approval of the minutes for the July 7th meeting. If we can get a motion for approval of those minutes, please raise your hand. Councilmember Jaxie is making the motion, a second by Councilmember Clark. Let me pause and see if there's any questions or comments regarding the minutes. All right, seeing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
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 Right, the minutes are approved. All right, we have now public participation. And so this is an opportunity for the public to express comment here in the room. I do not see any members of the public here. So I will check to see if we have anyone on Zoom. All right, so we have no one in the room and no one on Zoom for public participation. So we'll proceed forward with the next item on the agenda, which is administration. And the first item is for information, the Internet Access Project Phase 2 update.
Thank you, Chair Garetano. I did want to follow up our last meeting. We had reviewed some addresses from inquiries given to us from residents. And from there, the feedback that was given from the committee is we really want to make sure that this time, this phase 2 is the last phase of the internet project, which I do agree with. And in this case, we went to Spectrum to have a meeting after the meeting, the committee meeting last month, and they did offer to provide the city with what they consider underserved as 100 megabits per second. They'll be providing the city with a list of addresses that currently are receiving internet service under that rate. They will also exclude the addresses included in the phase 1 master list. So that can be determined that these addresses, once we have this list, these addresses would be the ones that are currently receiving less than 100 megabits per second and would be deemed underserved by definition. In this case, in order to receive this information, we do have to sign a non-disclosure agreement with Spectrum. That being said, the city attorney currently has a copy of that NDA and is working on redlining it as we speak. Once it's been approved by the city attorney, we should be able to get that back over to them and get that list. And we're expecting to have it ready to go for final approval after we have the full list in the September committee meeting. Available for any questions now. Thank you.
Let me see if we have any questions either in the room or on Zoom. I see Councilmember McCutcheon with her hand up, and then we'll go to Councilmember Clark. Go ahead, Councilmember McCutcheon.
Thank you. Mr. Lee, so what happens to the homes that are currently being prepared for Spectrum Internet? I know there's a couple subdivisions where they've already started working. So giving your comments, how is that going to impact those residents?
Councilmember McCutcheon, are you referring to the individuals in phase 1, or are you referring to people that had inquired about being on phase 2?
Phase 2.
Okay, yes. In that case, those individuals, I was going to have 2 different lists to provide to the committee. One being the list provided from Spectrum, that people that, based off their data are under 100 megabits per second. And then there was going to be our list that are from individuals that are reaching out to the city requesting service. So we could do some kind of combination of two, or we could utilize the data that we get from Spectrum to filter those individuals out. If we see that someone that inquired has 750 megabits per second at their home currently, then that would be considered pretty good speed right now. 500 to 1,000 would be considered pretty good. So in that case, we might be able to rule some of these out, but I do believe there's probably going to be a lot of addresses that get added to the list with this coming in, because just based off the preliminary data that you can get from public records online, it does seem like a lot of the city is underserved, even when it's in the more densely populated areas.
So those that are already in progress of Spectrum installing internet, that will continue. That won't end up on phase 1 or phase 2 list. But if they're in the process, we'll go ahead and continue.
Yes. So in that case, Councilmember McCutcheon, the individuals that are in phase 1, those individuals, their houses will be outfitted with the internet infrastructure. Without a doubt, that's going to continue to go and should be completed by April 3rd, 2024. This is only referencing phase 2 of the project. At that point, all phase 1 addresses should have that internet service availability. So that'll be key there. But this is really just focused on the individuals that maybe didn't reach out to the city, but might have not so good internet. So we make sure that if we're going to do a phase 2 and we're going to do it right and make sure that they don't have to come back, and we have more residents come back in the future that say, hey, I wasn't part of phase 2. Can we have a phase 3? This is really to make sure we blanket this and get as many individuals covered as possible, and base it off actual factual data of how fast their internet is currently.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Clark.
So, I remember the underserved being a different number when we first started doing this with the ARPA funds, and that there was a certain underserved limit that those monies should be used for. And now it's up to 100 that we're talking about now. Is that a problem with the ARPA funds or did that requirement change over the time?
My understanding is that requirement changed to 100 megabits per second. Actually, quite recently, it was kind of whenever we were negotiating the phase 1 deal, that was kind of in limbo, them changing it. And then towards the end, after we already had executed the agreement, from my understanding, it was changed to 100 megabits per second. But then on top of that, sorry, didn't mean to cut you off.
All right. Any other questions or comments regarding the Internet Access Project? All right, Councilmember Nye.
As far as the confidentiality of the list, who will be allowed to see the list? Like, will we be able to see the list? And just for the record, I think I know this answer, but what is the reasoning for not getting the list out there?
The main thing I would, thank you, Councilmember Nyan. The main thing I think they're trying to get across here, and we can determine that, and it won't be signed without giving you guys an update. But at the end of the day, I think what they're trying to do is not necessarily, they don't want it to be posted out into the public. They don't want everyone to be able to look at it and then their competition be able to see that they know that data, whatever it might be. I think it would either be for internal staff eyes or committee staff eyes that are making the decision, depending on the language that gets approved. But in this case, the main thing is they don't want us to have this knowledge of, okay, these houses definitely need it because they're at 5 megabits per second, let's say. And then we utilize a different team, a different company to fulfill that requirement. I think that's from what I understand.
All right, then we'll proceed then. If there aren't any other comments with this update here, we'll move on then for action. So we have the Investment Management Services RFP update. And there's 2 attachments or documents, and I know that our finance officer just handed out a document as well.
Thank you, Chair Garitano. Yes, so from the last meeting, the committee had requested, there was some questions that were raised, and also there was a request that, hey, is there an individual or a non-biased party that could review these RFPs and would have the know-how and the knowledge to be able to review them adequately from an academic standpoint and be able to provide a non-biased recommendation. Luckily, our finance officer, Dawn Kaiser, was able to, she was already in contact with the Bruce Ring to see if he would have been able to do this. He was retiring or moving on to another position. In this case, his replacement, the assistant director of investments, Mr. Saucier, he was moving into the position I think it's actually this month, he'll be moving into that position or early September. And he's the director of investments for the state of Missouri. He will be anyways, and now he's the assistant. And in this case, he was willing to take on this project just to review the RFPs without any input from us. We pretty much said, hey, here's the RFP we sent out. Here are the proposals that came in, and here's our model investment policy as of date. And from there, he was able to draw up a quick one-sheeter. Unfortunately, today, he was not able to attend this meeting just based off the fact that he had some prior commitments. That being said, what I was hoping to do during this meeting, under the chair's discretion, is compile a list of questions from the committee members that you would like to see answered by the individual that conducted the survey, conducted the actual evaluation. And then from there, we can compile that and provide that list to him, and then distribute it to the committee at a later date, and then hopefully have him here at the September meeting for a discussion. Thank you. Available for any questions at this point.
For questions or comments? All right, Councilmember Clark, you can start. Yeah.
Sorry, losing my hearing. So, when his recommendation involved the, he recommended to move forward with Columbia Capital as the investment manager and retaining Commerce Trust as the custodian. And, I'm just a little reluctant with the Commerce, since we had from listening to Larry Bro's explanation of it, it sounded like we needed to get away from Commerce.
In this case, I can speak on this matter, Mr. Chair. I will say that the vast majority of municipalities in the state of Missouri use Commerce as a custodian and use it as the main banking institution. In this case, the Commerce wouldn't be actually making the transaction, I believe. So it would be Columbia Capital that would be making the transaction. That being said, it is ultimately up to the committee in this case. But I would like to state that many municipalities use Commerce as their main banking institution.
Yeah, maybe if I could add a comment there. I think the key thing to differentiate is the custodian is exactly what it says. It's a custodian, means they hold it. But where you're seeking the advisement on this is where, according to that particular item, it would be Columbia. They're the ones that are going to be paid for that advisement fee and would be providing it. So there is a difference between who just maintains custody of the asset versus who's actually pulling the trigger or the advice component of it. And then, obviously a custodian you want to make sure is one that has good reputation and the financial backing, the assets to stay healthy during periods of, decline and, other times. So, right.
I did want, Mr. Chair, may I add one other thing too? Thank you. I did just want to note as well, if and obviously we can come up with a nice list of questions here and hopefully have Mr. Saucier here at the meeting next month. But the main piece here too is that the city currently has the majority of its extra funds that could be invested in some type of long-term security, as in it could be a normal security with the government, or it could be a CD right now. So how we were kind of looking at this is, if we were to move forward, we might want to look at it as a situation where, as these investments come to mature, they would then be accepted by whatever institution we would move forward with. But giving them, a set amount that's already invested, I don't see personally the gain that we would get unless it's able to be transferred and invested today. I don't, Ms. Kaiser's here tonight if she wants to explain a little bit further, but really it's just the fact that we already have quite a bit of investments tied up. So I'm kind of proposing as these investments come to maturity, then they would be transferred over to the discretion of whatever firm we would decide to go with, if any. Thank you.
Dawn Kaiser, Finance Officer for the city. We do currently have about $32 million invested in treasuries and CDs. So that would be about 74% of the city's total portfolio. According to the Missouri state law and Missouri public fund investing guides, all of these investments have to be completely insured with as instructed by the state of Missouri. So they're all backed either by U.S. treasuries or agencies. CDs are collateralized if they're over the FDIC insured amount, which many of ours are. So the safety of our investments, I would say, is very good. I don't think we could get any better than what we have currently. And Commerce Bank also manages our banking operations, and they've done a fine job as far as I'm concerned. So, do you have any other questions for me?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Actually, I don't know if it's a question for you, but thank you for putting all this stuff together. I know it's a lot. My only thought is because it seems like we haven't really taken a look at this in this way in the past. I guess my question either for you or for the gentleman who's possibly going to come visit us is like what he sent us is great because it definitely answers like in a very objective manner, like this is good, this is bad. But I don't know how confident, I know I'm not very confident in myself in understanding what questions we should even be asking. So like as I've seen in some other, RFPs and things that we put out, like companies are great at answering the questions that we are asked. They're not always so great at like, oh yeah, but you maybe should ask this other thing that you didn't. And so if there is such a thing or a suggestion from these guys of like, hey, this is something you want to look at, this is good, because I mean, the only negative being it's in Kansas City, I guess that's a good thing, but I don't know. I think having a person that does that stuff every day, not that you don't, Dawn, but like really that's what they do. That would be at least a little bit more reassuring for me to understand what we're even trying to figure out. We want to manage the money as best we can, but we also don't want to just miss an easy thing that we just didn't know was supposed to be there.
Well, we can definitely add that to one of the, our questions to Mr. Saucier is there anything that we missed, or is there anything important that we should be thinking about? I know that with government fund investing, the most important things are safety and security, and then the rates are, the last thing. So I think in reviewing his assessment of the RFPs, I think it was his primary goal, I think, was looking at those things. So yeah, that's definitely a question that we can pose to him and have him come back with a response at the next meeting.
So Dawn, I'll ask a question here and just maybe clarify for, make sure I understand and others. That management fee is just a fee for the advice. And I believe then whatever trade takes place, whether it's a CD or treasury, there is a commission or fee that's built into that rate, or is that management fee inclusive of any commission?
The way that we have done it thus far is the fee is baked into the rates that we're given. I believe that you're correct in saying that the advisory fee would probably be on top of that, but that's another question that we can clarify with him because I've never had an investment management company do the work for us
I
before.
think that would be a good question to ask is, how the fees are, and then they may have a fee schedule for those types of treasury bills or notes, whatever it is that going to be invested in. That would be probably based on either the amount that's being invested or perhaps the term. So there's a fee schedule there, and that might be a good way to compare the firms and how they charge fees.
Okay. So the handout that I provided to you, I did that because Councilmember Edens expressed a comparison of fees. So I just did it on roughly a $25 million investment portfolio. So I thought that would be helpful for you to take a look at what the advisory fee would be at least. And then I'll follow up with Mr. Saucier to see if there are any additional fees on the purchase of each item.
Yeah, I think that would be good. So this way, at least folks know what the upcharge is in there.
Okay. Anything else?
All right, and I guess we'll wait for the next meeting then, and that's it then.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Don.
Oh, Councilmember Clark, sorry, we missed it there.
So do you want us to send a list of questions to Dawn, to you, how do you want to put this?
You want to take that?
Yeah. Thank you, Chair Garitano, and thank you, Councilmember Clark. If you wouldn't mind, if you could just send any questions you would like me to pass on to Mr. Saucier, if you would just email them directly to me, I'll be sure to get them passed over to him, and we'll be sure to present those options. Hopefully he can explain it to himself in September. Thank you.
We'll move on to the next part of the agenda, which is under Public Works. So the first item is in regards to the update on the waste hauler transition. And we'll have Public Works Director Rick Brown speak to that.
This is a new topic. Not really. We've been talking a lot of trash for a long time, it seems, and tonight's no different. As you know, we are in week 2 of a new era of waste hauling in Wildwood with Republic Services and Gateway Disposal hard at work. By and large, I think the experience has been positive with both haulers. In this first week of service, there's been a few mishaps, perhaps maybe have one reported tonight potentially, but maybe nothing out of the unordinary. So that's a good thing overall or in general. I wanted to talk a little bit about, I think one of the main issues that we're hearing from residents of, and mainly we've received tons and tons of calls, frankly, during this transition period, and it has been a bit challenging on staff. If we had to do it over, I'm sure we'd do a lot of things differently. We were dealt a hand of cards that we had to play. We had a short period of time to make this transition work. And I think everyone's trying to do the best we can with the situation we have, but nonetheless, we have gotten a lot of calls and complaints and angry residents, and we're doing our best to deal with them as they come in. And Franklin, Michelle, and Ruth and Megan's been answering the phone calls up front, should be commended. And I know there's been times where they've all been extremely frustrated with the call volume and the manner of calls that we're getting. So it's been tough. It's been really tough. And I hope we've cleared the hurdle there and we're on our way back to more normal times. Seemed like the call volume was down, has been kind of decreasing each day. And was, I think, better today overall. So, but one of the key things I think that is still an issue is the cart situation. I think most of you are aware of this. We switched over to automated collection. It really wasn't something we wanted to do. It wasn't something Department of Public Works recommended. The haulers, all of them that expressed any desire to work with us, wanted automated collection. They wanted to put their carts on the street. And so we ultimately conceded that to them, and that's the direction, of course, they went. But now folks have been calling, asking, they want card adjustments, they don't want the cards, or they want to know what to do with the old cards. It's, what do we do with those Blue Meridian cards? I think you're aware of this. But I did want to kind of clarify that, the Meridian cards, when we go back and research it, technically the city owns those Meridian Blue cards. So at some point when we extended Meridian don't quote me on the exact dates, when we extended their contract after the initial term, we took on those cards. We took ownership of them. So, and now 20, somewhere between 2007 and 2015 that happened. So there are in the order of at least 11,000 cards, at least one per household, probably more, frankly, that are out there that we do own. So from that perspective, it is hard not to feel some obligation to help people get rid of these cards that they really don't have any use for anymore. So kind of wanted to point that out to you. So we're working that issue really hard right now. Up till the transition, we kept telling folks after August 1st, call your hauler if you want to get rid of your card, and it will be a bulk pickup. And that's been the message we've been sending. Now we're obviously after August 1st, and it's kind of time to finalize a plan to get these cards addressed with residents and start changing the message over to exactly what's going to happen. I would also point out, in addition to those 11,000 cards, there's an undetermined number of green 95-gallon recycling cards that are out there as well that the city probably owns in addition to the Blue Meridian cards. So just keep that in mind as well. So with the moving forward, we do have a form that we have been using to track resident requests. Thomas, with his computer skills, was quick to pull that together. And we've been using that as best we can. So when people call in, they want their card removed, we find out who their provider is, and we put their information into the form, and then we report the contents of the form back to the hauler so they know who we've collected names and where they're at for potential cart removal later on. And then certainly residents can do that on their own if they choose to. It's available on our website, and hopefully the haulers themselves are using it independently of the city as residents call in to help track those requests. At least that is the hope. So that's out there, and that was kind of the next step we've taken. Now I wanted to go over with you a couple final items. So one of the keys with the carts is that the haulers say they want to be relieved of any potential liability or any claim of ownership in the future. So if they're going to remove these carts, they want to be comfortable that essentially they own them and they can dispose of them. So we have been working with John Young regarding this concern. John has prepared a bill of sale for each hauler, which I don't know if you saw my memo was late getting posted, and I apologize for that, but we have a bill of sale prepared by John Young. And the idea is that we want to get this executed between each hauler, and this would give them some clarity with regard to the ownership of the carts, and that they would feel comfortable that at that point, once they collected the cart, they could then dispose of it legally, however they see fit. So that's part of the request to you tonight. Is I would like to get the council to approve our recommendation, which is to proceed with executing that bill of sale with each hauler to allow them to begin the process of collecting the carts and disposing of them. So that is the one recommendation that I would like y'all to consider and hopefully pass a motion in support of. As far as the specifics of getting rid of the carts, I did want to point out in general, there's a bit of a difference between Gateway and Republic. Gateway plans to do it on Saturdays when they're not working, off hours essentially. So Chuck is pigeoned or scheduled 4 Saturdays for collection of carts in his area for Gateway disposal. So basically 2 Saturdays in August, 2 Saturdays in September. And so it'd be August 19th, August 26th, September 15th, and September 22nd. And those will coincide with actual days of collection. So like if your day is Monday, that's your collection day. Your day to set your card out for collection would be August 19th. And so on Tuesday would be August 26th. Wednesday would be September 15th. Thursday would be September 22nd. So the goal will be to communicate this with residents for Gateway in advance through postcards and other means so that they're clear that that's the plan. And incidentally, Chuck, we did get a contact from a waste hauler south of St. Louis near Ironton, who has actually expressed a desire to assist with the collection, because he has actually indicated that he would like to get some of those Meridian carts. And we explained the situation. He was still interested. Seemed like he felt he could repurpose the carts. So I'm hopeful and optimistic that that will occur, and that the hauler will come into town, and he wants to do this on Saturdays as well. So he's been communicating with Chuck. Hopeful they can organize this effort, and we can actually at least tell residents some of those carts will get repurposed and reused. So that was good news. Republic, I think you may be aware, was spoke to the issue a bit at the Coffee with Mayor last week. And what was stated and what they've been telling us is that as far as cart removal, they're planning to do it essentially every day of their collection. So a little bit by little bit, piece by piece. So when people put them out at the curb, and if they mark them as a removal or mark them remove, they will dispose of them that day. Now there's a limited capacity each day they're out. So there's no guarantee if residents going to get their cart collected. And that's the downside of it. But ultimately they said, or I think Joey said at that meeting, that he figured he could have it done by the end of August. So if that's true, that's pretty good. Or a pretty short order, I would say, from their perspective. So with that, again, I think tonight, if there's any other questions you have relative to the transition to the cart situation, certainly we'll entertain them. I guess, Thomas, do you have anything else you want to add?
No, thank you, Rick. I appreciate that. And with the permission of the chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. One item I did want to mention as well is just a third option, if you will, if that the haulers had kind of given in on that was not part of the discussion originally. If residents elect and they already have yard waste services, or they want to use yard waste services, they are able to utilize their Meridian can or their Wildwood cart, whatever it is, for yard waste. So that is an option as well. I talked to a gentleman that had one cart left over, and I asked him if he had yard waste, and he did. He uses it. So now he actually elected to keep the cart. So main thing with that is we'll be getting stickers. The city will be getting stickers from the haulers, Republic and Gateway, along with them having the stickers on their own. What these residents will just need to do is just whenever they're by City Hall, slap it on there. But for right now, if yard waste is in the Meridian or the older carts, they will pick it up as yard waste.
All right, I'm sure we're going to have some questions and comments. So I'm going to start with those that are online because I see their hands up right there in front of me. So Councilmember Hopper and then McCutcheon. So Hopper, if you want to go.
Yeah, my first question is in relation to the Waste Connections bins. So I know there's at least 3 or 4 just on my street that Waste Connections has not picked up. So as far as this agreement that you're discussing to turn over ownership or whatever, does that relate to the Waste Connections bins as well, or how are those handled?
Thank you, Councilmember Hopper. So in this case, those are the property of Waste Connections, and they are liable and responsible for all those carts. What we've been told by Waste Connections is that they are picking up carts every single Friday. They were supposed to get them all during that last couple of weeks of collection. Any missed carts can be scheduled for a pickup from Waste Connections if you call the same customer service number that residents were calling before if they were to experience any issues. So the resident would just need to call Waste Connections and let them know that their cart is still there. And Mr. Brown, I believe, has some information as well.
All I was going to add was we can put that on our website and make sure that we have the current Waste Connections cart process up to date on our website.
Yeah, I think that's definitely going to be a thing because I've had almost everybody I know that has Waste Connections cans, and then all of a sudden we were switched over. I think there was some understanding of okay, at least a lot of people I talked to kind of knew that we're transitioning and things are kind of weird, but I think our dependability of Waste Connections over the past few months is kind of coming up again with these carts that they were unable to pick them up. And it was very sporadic. We had 2 or 3 people on at least on my street that their carts did get picked up, and there was 3 or 4 who didn't get them picked up. So it was just kind of all over the place. So I think as easy as we can make this on residents, to get this through to Waste Connections. I just hate asking them to go into more and have to sit on the phone and try to call Waste Connections and schedule that pickup and do all that kind of stuff. And they've already kind of up in arms a little bit about that process and how it went.
All right, Councilmember McCutcheon, you're up.
Yeah, I've been getting a lot of complaints as well about that. But one thing that keeps coming up is, I don't know if this is an HOA or if it's a city ordinance, but people are concerned because they can't fit the carts in their garages. And there's been an issue and complaints all along about people leaving their carts out in front of their house. Can somebody speak to that and how we're going to do that going forward?
You want to take that or? No?
It's fine. Rick is more like, you can speak on it if you'd like, but the main piece here is, as this transition is occurring, the city is being a little bit more lax on the visible cans from the street. That being said, after these efforts here occur, where we're removing all the Meridian carts, the new haulers are removing the Meridian carts and the old Wildwood carts, and individuals have that choice to either use it as yard waste, or Waste Connections picks up their carts too. Once those carts are removed and we get kind of back to a homeostasis here, we do plan to get back into enforcement there. And obviously with that, residents do have the option right now with the two new haulers to put in a request for a smaller cart. So if they just have the 95 and a 65 and they want to go down to a 65 for the trash, they can make that request. And most of the time the hauler does oblige. So that's the one thing. It's just right now, being a little lax with it, but obviously as these issues start straightening up, we can obviously address them at that point and start enforcing it a little bit more stricter.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Farmer.
Yeah, not exactly about the cans. I'm sure we'll get that sorted out, but I've gotten a few questions from people about all of the missed yard waste pickup from Waste Connections before. Do we have any thought or ideas on how we're going to try to fix that?
Yes, we can speak about that a little bit further, but at the end of the day, we have been consulting with the city attorney right now. We're put in a little bit of a bind because we needed them to pick up those carts at the end of the collection, but at the end of the day, they were missing more collections. But so if we were to exalt the parameters of the contract, we would probably have left all those Waste Connection carts out on the side too. So the main thing would be to look into other alternative ideas for how we can hold them accountable for that. Because the main thing is we want to make sure our residents, if they did experience multiple miscollections, they are repaid by the hauler that did take their money.
Councilmember Clark.
Yeah, first I want to just thank the staff that worked on this, because this has been a huge endeavor to take on. And I know that, we as a committee have spent a lot of hours just dealing with it, and not even comparable to what you and your staff have put in doing this and taking calls, and done a very excellent job. So there have been complaints, but I've heard a lot of good comments as well. So thank you for doing that, and you're appreciated. But I think that when we get a plan for this and we know exactly what we're going to do, or how to get these parts back, we need to have it set in stone and go with that, and not add, but we'll also do this. We'll also let you use this for yard waste, or we'll also, maybe we'll pick up in this other can. Those things are going to happen, but every time we add that into our plan, those steps, it's going to cause some confusion, some more complexity to it, and a lot more calls are going to come in because people aren't going to know. They've already got the mailers. We've had meetings for people to come, public comment time in multiple public works meetings, as well as council meetings and the mayor coffee. And so people can come and comment. So I just think that we need to limit it to what we have and then stick with that instead of confuse it. And I would also suggest that we have a list of all these questions that we're getting in. We're getting the same questions over and over and over in comment. And maybe have, I don't know if it's possible, but sometimes when I have a question about, maybe my washing machine, I'll go to the website and it's got, here's the list of questions with answers already there. And so I don't have to go and talk with somebody else. I can just go through, find that question, and there's my answer. That's all.
Let's see. So first, I want to echo what Councilmember Clark said. Thank you all for everything that you're doing. I have no doubt, based on the number of calls that I'm getting, that you're getting even more. So thank you. I do appreciate it. And I would also echo that I'm getting positive comments too. Just talked to a resident like within 2 hours ago, and she just totally randomly, and she basically explained that she totally understood what was going on and that she stayed informed. And so if any residents are listening right now, please, I encourage you to go out to the city's website. There's a lot of information there. Don't hesitate to reach out to most of the people here, as we do have some answers. If we don't have all the answers, we certainly will seek them out. I like the idea of a frequently asked questions list. You probably have one for your team already that says, if you're asked this question, here's the answer, et cetera. If you do have that, please forward it. So my one question, Tom, you mentioned the gateway or I don't remember. I'm sorry, maybe it was Rick. Mentioned the gateway pickups coming in August and September. How are we getting those communicated out to the residents at this time? I'm seeing a lot of garbage cans around, Meridian cans mostly. I'm actually excited to hear that there might be somebody down south that's willing to take these, repurpose them. That's a message that I think will resonate very well with Wildwood residents when they hear it, because I have been getting some complaints about recycle cans, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, how are we communicating the gateway pickups?
Yes. So how we plan on doing that, and I will say this is the actual dates that we received, those are pretty new. Chuck it's a pretty massive operation to get this all planned out. So these dates are pretty fresh. I mean, literally within this week, they've established what days everyone's going to get assigned. That being said, when it comes to Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, whatever day you have, the city will obviously post this schedule out on all our digital channels, but we also plan on taking the Monday batch through the routing file that we have from Gateway and sending just a Monday. Your date is September 19th. Put your old card out September 19th. Those individuals will get that card, but the Tuesday individuals will get their own card too. So there'll be 4 separate cards that will go out just to the residents that are affected on the individual day. So it's not confusing with multiple dates or anything like that.
Okay, so you said a card, so you're meaning a mailer? All right, so it'll be another mailer. You and I talked a little bit about, I know you guys had this idea that I thought was phenomenal. I know you thought was phenomenal and got waylaid about the idea of a sticky note on the garbage cans so we're doing something on our side from the city to communicate it. You might consider encouraging Chuck to do the same thing with his drivers. Having witnessed their pickup in my neighborhood last week, phenomenal guys. They were very professional, enjoyed dealing with them. If you might just ask, hey, is it possible on the pickup the week before, your guy slaps a note on these garbage cans as a reminder? I don't saying it has to happen, but as you and I discussed, if we're talking about a 6-figure digit to pick these up, we want to get it right and not have to do it again. So I'm hoping he'd be willing to consider anything to make it go smooth.
I will say Councilmember Chuck has told me that he does plan to utilize phone messaging or robocalls to get the message out, assuming he's got residents' phone numbers.
And one of the benefits, I do apologize. I was just going to say one of the benefits, and if there are residents listening, one of the benefits of filling out the form is that this information is being shared with your hauler. So when you talk about a robocall or you talk about an email blast from your actual hauler itself, if you fill out the form, you could be assured that they will, any communication that gets sent out to the residents, they'll have that information and they'll be able to get directly to you with, hey, the cart pickup's on the 19th for you or whatever it might be. So there's another question in the form too that says, what's your pickup day? So that's pretty important with Gateway. If your pickup day is on Thursday, then they'll know, okay, that's the individual we need to say is, September 15th or whatever it might be. Thank you.
I just have one comment. I've heard positive things as well. I mean, complaints too, but I've heard some really positive things, especially when Republic was here those couple of weeks. I know I reached out, I got an immediate email. They sent a manager out to the site to look at what was going to be a private road. People were going to have to bring their cans down. They said, oh, no, they're not going to have to do that. I mean, they were very responsive quickly. I do like the idea. The one thing I have heard is they're getting conflicting information when they do speak to someone. Especially it seems like Gateway. So along the line of having the standard questions and answers, maybe that's something their phone people, like if we can all have the same answers to the questions, so they're not getting conflicting information depending on who they're talking to.
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Nyan, and just to let you know too, we have been communicating with the haulers. That one thing is that sometimes the customer service teams they have the information, but they might be getting yelled at or something like that. So they like to. We've addressed it though. I will say that Rick and I have had multiple conversations with both Chuck with Gateway and then obviously Joey and Susan with Republic to make sure that they're getting straight information and everyone's on the same page. So I appreciate that though.
Member Clark, did you have your hand up?
I did. I was gonna say, is it so much more expensive to send a letter than a card?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A card would be the cheaper option. It's just card stock. You can get 2 out of 1 page, whereas it's pretty much just you're doubling the cost because the cost of production, not the production, the cost of the material, because you have to also have the envelope in that case. So it's not out of the ballpark. We could send a letter. It would increase the price though.
Well, the reason I'm asking is like, especially in Ward 6, we're doing well with the internet project, but there are still people that don't have the connections to just, when we tell them, oh, go check the website, it's maybe not as acceptable as somebody in town. So having a letter that also included in that envelope, the form that you're talking about filling out on the website, you could kill 2 birds with 1 stone with sending that to everybody that's in the Gateway area, because they may not have internet connection and be able to do that online.
I can definitely check the budget to see if it'll allow that. So are you saying that we would mail out a letter and then also put an additional letter in there with postage that can be mailed back to City Hall?
No, I would say just put the form in there and tell them if they're interested, they could drop it off or they could mail it back themselves to this address.
Okay. Yeah, I can definitely look at that. Thank you.
All right. Well, I do want to echo the comments too, that, the work that you're doing is greatly appreciated and answering all the calls, the questions that have been coming in. And I think it's important to keep into perspective that, this has a lot of different hooks, this transition here. It's a bit complex because our city is over 35,000 residents. We have over 11,000 households that are impacted by this. And let's not forget too that we're also the 3rd largest city in the area, 68 square miles. So we cover rural and urban areas. Then we have an outgoing waste hauler. We have 2 incoming waste haulers. All their contracted help that they have with those cart exchanges or deliveries. And then even the city staff. So there are a lot of people that are involved in making this possible. I think one of the things that, we've tried to do a good job about is communicating out to folks. And, I think the feedback I've gotten is that those that are aware have been reading the e-newsletters, all these different communications. I mean, when you think about it, we've been talking about this on a monthly basis in this committee alone since January, and also at times even last year, because our residents reach out to us, whether it's concerns, complaints about service. So we've heard, and we've been discussing this since the beginning of the year. And then it's been a topic at the Coffee with the Mayor. I know that was a big discussion this week, and I heard it was good to have representatives from the haulers there. West News covered it in a news story in June. And then the city's e-newsletter has had every week since June 9th a story about the waste hauler transition. And of course, there were the mailings that residents got, at least 2 of them. So there's been quite a bit out there for folks to, capture that information. But we have to understand too that not everyone may be online, checking email, getting their newsletter, or perhaps the mailing was misplaced when they got it. So we do have questions from folks and understanding how it is. So I do want to thank you for everything that you're doing there. And then with this update that you do provide today regarding the carts, because it is a bit of a flow chart, whether it's a waste connections part, a non-waste connections, and then who's your hauler if it's a non-waste connections, that, if you put that in the simplest form possible and, communicate that out, especially now with that new schedule from Gateway, when they'll be picking up their carts, folks hopefully can follow through and easily see which way is going to work for them to have an old cart removed. But, our residents have done really good too. I mean, I've seen people out there posting them on Marketplace, and, there was a hauler that I saw, he was on my street this weekend, Saturday, and he saw a Marketplace ad, and he actually had a hauling business in Carbondale. And he was responding to some of these Facebook ads because he's like, I could use these carts. And he was in my neighborhood because there were people I know that posted them there. So I said, well, I'll take you around and we'll fill your truck up before you go. So, he did. And I think he even came back looking for more of those carts that people were looking to get rid of online. So I think it's good to see that these carts are being repurposed. And, with this kind of complex and large, type of transition, those folks that may have been missed, I know that when that information gets sent, whether it's to Thomas or the public receives it, they do respond pretty quickly. And like Councilmember Nine said, I've also gotten quite a number of notes that people have been impressed. I had one comment from a resident who was so ecstatic. They said it was finally great to see a truck without any hydraulic fluid leaking. So, I think it's going to be moving along as soon as we get these carts removed and folks can get back to normal and they'll get the service that they deserve. So that's the update then. Anything else?
Mr. Chair, we are just tonight, the Department of Public Works and Department Administration is requesting a motion to endorse the bill of sale of the old carts from the city of Wildwood to our new haulers. Thank you.
Councilmember Farmer making that motion. Is there a second? Councilmember Jaxie. Any questions? All right. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 All right. Then I don't see any one oppose or abstain. And I think too, it's important to clarify, especially for anyone that's reading, there is no financial transaction with these carts that are being, it's more of just handing ownership over so that they can be properly disposed of for those residents.
That is correct. There is no financial transaction. I know it does say $1 in there. I think that's a legalese, if you will. But in this case, it's really just what this purpose is that the haulers just want to make sure if they're going to get rid of, in some cases, some of them are going to, the bigger haulers that's taking on more houses, you're going to have to take on, up to 10,000 carts potentially. They want to make sure a future city hall, a future city administrator, a future mayor they won't be able to come back and say, hey, what'd you do with our carts? So that's really what's happening with this.
Okay. All right, well, that motion passed, so we'll move on then to for action items here. So we have the MoDOT cost share supplemental agreement for the Route 100 left turn lane project. So that one there is for Rick. And actually, you're going to cover maybe both of these together since they're similar.
Yeah, Chair Garantano, I'd like to do that if that's okay with the committee. They are essentially the same agreement and for similar purpose. So I'll do that if that's okay. So as you, I think, are very aware, we did obtain MoDOT cost share funds last year for essentially two improvement projects on Route 100. The J-turn improvement project and the left turn lane improvement project through MoDOT. Those two projects will be funded half or 50% by MoDOT. The city will pick up the rest of the tab for construction and engineering costs as well. The projects are scheduled for funding in MoDOT's 2024 federal fiscal or 2024 state fiscal year, which begins July 1st, 2024. So our schedule is to try to get the plans and the engineering completed such that we could actually be in a position to bid the projects next summer. MoDOT is also working on their project to rehab and overlay Route 100 at the same time. And it is funded in the same year, their fiscal year of 2025, which would be available July 1st, 2024. So when we became aware that MoDOT was working on their own project to resurface through the limits of these two projects the city was moving forward with, we had discussions with MoDOT about them essentially taking over the projects, our two projects, once construction began. The idea would be to have one entity administer the construction of the projects, bid them, so encourage that we would get bids from contractors to construct all three projects rather than do them independently. And so this would alleviate some tasks, and it would also potentially open up for larger contractors to provide lower bids. So we're hoping at the end of the day that it would alleviate some redundancy and effort and save costs on the construction side. So what I'm bringing to you tonight are the two agreements that we have to approve with MoDOT to enact that, to have MoDOT essentially take over the administration of the project at construction. So they would bid the project with theirs, and then they would inspect it and administer the construction when the bid has been approved. So it saves us of having to worry about staffing, inspecting the project, being out in the field. So it does actually help us from that perspective. So tonight, I have the two agreements. One is for the left turn lane project. One is for the J-turn project that we're asking for the committee to approve the recommendation that is to proceed with approval of both of these agreements that would lead to these changes in the projects. I should also note that there is one difference between the J-turn project and the left turn lane project, is that we did put in for separate federal funding. Actually, we requested federal funding for both projects in addition to the state funding last year. We were successful in that request for the J-turn project. So we picked up another $900,000 of federal funds on top of the 2.9 million in state funds to put towards the construction cost on the project. So that fact is also noted in the agreement for the J-turn project, but otherwise they're pretty much the same agreement, just stipulated for each improvement project. So that is the recommendation that we move forward with the council approval of these agreements. And if there are any specific questions from the committee, I'll be glad to answer them at this time. Thank you.
Councilmember Jackson.
Rick, thanks for the summary, and I really appreciate you and the other folks at the city looking for ways to make the cost savings. So I would happily make the motion.
A motion made by Councilmember Jackson. Is there a second? Councilmember Nine with the second. Any other discussion? Councilmember Clark.
Just one question. Mr. Brown, when we talked about, I don't know, a year ago, about the right-hand turn into onto Mueller Road. And you said that that possibly could be added into one of these projects. Is there a way to maybe make an amendment to that and add that in as well, or not?
Councilmember, that's a good question. I think what I'd suggest is we reach out to MoDOT and see if we can get a response from them relative to their project potentially. So I think when we brought that to their attention, that was the direction. So since we don't directly impact that area, but their resurfacing project would, the thought would be that be sure that when they wrap up their work, they've striped that right turn lane back to the way it was originally. So I think we can reach out to MoDOT and see if that is indeed included in their plans. Wouldn't surprise me if it's not at this point, frankly, but we can certainly reach out to them and try to get them to respond to that if you don't mind.
Right, so we had a motion by Councilmember Jackson and seconded by Councilmember Nyan. I don't see any other discussion. So all those in favor of the motion, and again, just to make sure we've got both in there in that motion, is that right, Michelle? Both the left turn lane and the, let's see, the J turn.
Okay, it's one motion for both.
One motion for both. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure everyone's clear with that.
Okay.
Okay, so, and the maker and second are in agreement, right? Okay, with that then, so all those in favor of that, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone? Don't believe anyone opposed or abstained. Okay, didn't see anyone, so that motion passes. So with that then, couple items that I will not go through. These are just for future discussion. And then miscellaneous, anything under miscellaneous? Councilmember McCutcheon.
I just have a question, Joe. Under for action was the investment management information. Since that was for action, should we not make a motion on that?
That one there will be coming back, but I'll let the administrator lead.
Thank you, Chair Garitano. The reason why it was under for action was in case tonight the committee wanted to take action, even though the recommendation from the department was to provide the city administrator and finance officer with a list of questions that we could pass on to the individual that reviewed the RFPs, and then move forward from there. But in case the committee wanted to choose a vendor or not choose a vendor, whatever you guys wanted to do, we wanted to make sure you guys had the option, given the fact that the evaluation has been conducted.
Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Clark.
Yeah, so do we have an updated strategic plan for August?
Yes. It's all intention. We actually have a staff meeting regarding it tomorrow. It'll be ready for the agenda, but we are currently we're still working on it.
I did, Councilmember McCutcheon's question did make me realize too, that when we were talking on the Public Works, it was a for information item there. The update on the waste hauler. So I think technically that motion that was made for the agreement there probably should be under for action. But what I think I would say is if there's no opposition from the commission there, I'm going to assume that you're just going to present that to council then.
Yes, and in this case, it would be, the reason why I was for information was that we got the final writing of the bill of sale at late notice. We did not expect it. We were trying to get an endorsement. We've spoken with the city attorney, and technically it doesn't need the council approval, and we will be still presenting it to council. The main thing is, though, we want to make sure that especially for Republic that's picking these up after they get this every day, we want to make sure they get it as soon as possible.
Good point. Yeah, I think it's well under probably the authorized that you can approve. So, Councilmember Clark.
One more, the culvert on Wild Horse Creek Road, since the road has been paved, the markings have been removed and the posts have been removed, but the signs are still up that say one lane road ahead? Are we gonna get that back on soon? People are confused.
Yep, council member, the road will be striped. I don't have a specific date. We usually wait a little bit, essentially to allow the asphalt to cure, more or less. So that when you stripe it, you get much better results if you wait a week or so. Get enough time for that asphalt to age a little bit. So I don't have the exact date when traffic control company will come out, but it should be within the next week or so to do the striping of the road. At that time, the discussions that we've had internally, I think the plan is to restripe it as a one-lane bridge and keep it in place as a one-lane bridge, just as an abundance of caution, frankly.
All right, seeing none, we'll move into adjournment. So ask for a motion for adjournment made by Councilmember Farmer. Is there a second? Made by Councilmember Clark. All those in favor, please say aye.
Uh,
Aye.
Meeting